Hi, and welcome to Lifelong Reading Techniques with Phonics. This unit forms part of the 8 units in the Certificate in Early Childhood Education, CECE. And so I'll be taking the phonics unit. This first module is titled Introduction to Phonics. My name is Deborah Adejobi, and I'll be teaching this unit. This is just a brief bio about myself. So I have a first degree in business economics, but then I also have a first class in English language and a master's in English language, as well as a PhD in view. I'm a certified trainer and teacher, and also a certified social media strategist into marketing, brand strategy development, and things like that, social media management, and all of that as well. I currently work as the head of marketing at Leeds City University, Ibadan. And I also lecture. I lecture in the Department of Languages and Literature, um, in particular the English language program of the department. Okay, so this program, or for this video that I'm making, of course, is for the benefit of online participants who had some issues with the network the first time the class was held, and also for those who missed, on-site participants who missed the first class. And so this introductory session was part of the warm-up in the class, where each individual was asked to introduce themselves, why they're on the course, and how they would like to be addressed during the course of the program. The objectives of this first lesson is to help learners demonstrate a clear understanding of the concept of phonics, to also help them be able to confidently differentiate between phonics and related concepts, and then to explain what the systematic synthetic phonics methodology is all about. For my online participants, this is the group, the link to the WhatsApp group. We have a WhatsApp group for all participants, both online and on-site. And so this is the link to the phonics group. So you can scan that link, that QR code, and join the WhatsApp group. Right. So for the first class, before we had the first class, I actually sent ahead a message, and the message asked everyone to try and find out what phonics is and what phonics is not. This is sort of like following the flipped classroom model, allowing you to do some research before actually coming into the class. And at this point, we had a discussion, we had an interaction in class where everybody had the opportunity to share what they had learned. And that's why this blank slide is here. People's comments, people's suggestions were entered onto this blank slide. And so we started one after the other to look at some concepts that are often confused with elocution. The first, with phonics, I'm sorry, the first one being elocution. Elocution is the art of speaking clearly and correctly. It involves learning to speak in a generally acceptable way using proper diction, correct stresses, accurate grammar, proper pronunciation. Even the way you carry yourself and the way you present yourself is all part of elocution. So people who teach public speaking also teach elocution. What they do is teach elocution. It is usually taught outside the mainstream English curriculum, and it places great emphasis on precision, on grammar, and pronunciation, on style of speaking, uh, and all that. So go back there. Phonics is not elocution, basically. The second thing that people usually confuse with phonics is English language. They just think that if you're teaching English and you're teaching English well in your school, then you're teaching phonics. Well, that's not right. English language is just another language. It is a native language in the countries like United States, United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, Ireland, and Australia. These are English as first language countries. So it is a native language in those countries. Then English language is also a second language or a lingua franca in some countries that were colonized by Britain, countries like Pakistan, India, Nigeria, Singapore, and other countries like Ghana and others like that. And it's a foreign language which is used almost exclusively for international communications in countries such as Russia and Japan. So phonics is not English language. Phonics is also not phonetics. Phonetics is a scientific study of the system of sounds of human speech in a particular language. It is a branch of linguistics that deals with sounds of speech and their production, combination, description, and representation by written symbols. When you think of phonetics, you also think of the IPA chart and how different sounds are represented on the IPA chart. That's what you think of when you think of phonetics. So we're looking at an IPA chart here of sounds, vowel sounds, and consonant sounds. When you see these symbols, you're thinking of phonetics, and that's not what elocution, and that's not what phonics is. I'm sorry. All right. So phonics is not phonetics, basically. Accents is another thing, another concept that is often confused with um, phonics. Phonics is not accent. An accent is a distinctive way of pronouncing words in a language, especially associated with a particular country or area or a social class. So there are at least as many varieties of English language as there are different ESL countries and indigenous languages that English comes in contact with. So, for example, in Nigeria, we can talk of an Igbo accent or an Ekiti accent. We can talk of a British accent. We can talk of a French accent. So it is the way that you speak in your first language and how your first language colors your second language, which oftentimes is English. And so that's what accent is, the way the influences of your first language on your second language. So you speak your second language with an accent from your first language. Um, so phonics is not accent. And then there's this concept of affectations. Phonics is not affectations. Affectation or an affected speech is a speech that is not natural to a person. It is an unnatural form of speech, and the reason why you do this is just because you want to impress other people. You want to sound posh, you want to sound like you're different from everybody else around you. In the Nigerian parlance, affectations is what you call phone. When you say someone is speaking speaking phone, that's what affectations is. It's fake, it's false, it's unnatural, and it makes people won't take you too seriously. It makes you sound unnatural. It's not the best way of speaking. Many people do it. Many OAPs do it, but it's not a natural way of speaking, basically, and it is certainly not. So what is phonics? There's an activity that we carried out in class, and that activity was used to demonstrate what phonics is. I will run through all of this very quickly. So we looked at how many letters there are in the English alphabet. Of course, there are, do you know? 26 letters, okay? And these are the 26 letters displayed on your screen here. Then I asked the question, how many consonants are in the English alphabet? Do you know? Okay, so there are 21 consonants in the English alphabet. And these are the 21 consonants in English. Now, how many consonant sounds are in English language? Notice I said consonant sounds now. How many are they? Do you know? There are 24 consonant sounds. And these are the consonant sounds represented by their IPA symbols. Now, how many vowels are in English language? 5. And these 5 vowels together represent how many vowel sounds? 20. These are the vowel sounds represented by the five, um, 5 English vowels. So altogether, how many sounds are in English language? You're right if you say 44. Some experts say 42, some say 46. It depends on what you're adding or what you're not adding, but the standard convention is 44 sounds. And this is how it is made up of 26 letters, 21 consonants, 5 vowels, and 44 sounds. How is it though that 5 vowels and 21 consonants make 44 sounds? Well, this is an explanation of it. English language does not have a one-to-one correspondence between letters and sound. So there is no one-to-one correspondence between letters and sounds. So in most Nigerian languages, there's a one-to-one correspondence. One sound, one letter represents one sound. This letter represents that sound, and that is it. But in English language, there isn't a one-to-one correspondence between letters and sounds. Some letters can represent more than one sound, like the letter C can be K as in cat, or it can be S as in ice. And then together, two sounds can come together to make a third sound. So the T and of T and H can combine to make a third sound, and which will be the the voiceless TH, or the th, which is the voiced TH. And then another example is O and I combining together to make oi. So O has its own sound, it has its own sound, but they come together to make oi. And then one sound can be represented by different letters. So like the I in rice is represented by the letter I, while the I in fly is represented by the letter Y. So all of these different scenarios results in 144 sounds from 26 letters. The English alphabetic code is the full set of letter-sound correspondences that determine how written English is spoken and how spoken English is written. And in order to read and write, you need to use that English alphabetic code. To transform print into sound is called decoding. And when you go from sound to print, so when you hear the word and then you're able to spell it, that is called, or write it down, that is encode. So phonics now, after all of this preamble, phonics now is using the knowledge of the alphabetic code to read, that's to decode, or to write, that's decoding. Phonics is concerned with more than the connection between, it's concerned with the connection between the graphical representation, that's the picture of the letter that you see, and then the sound that that letter represents. Remember, notice that I did not say the sound that the letter makes. The sound, the letter is inanimate, the sound cannot, the letter cannot do anything, but it represents a sound, okay? So don't say letter A makes A or letter A says A. Letter A is represented by the sound A. Phonics is a practical method of teaching people to read and spell by training them to associate letters and letter groups with their phonetic values. Notice that the people there is highlighted. It is done for a particular reason. The point is that we're trying to stress the fact that phonics is a skill that is not just targeted at children, but it is a skill that people of all ages can use to read, to learn to read and spell. It is not child's play. It is not about children alone. It's not only children that can use it, but a skill that you can use throughout your life. And that's why phonics is called a lifelong skill. You probably use phonics every day too without even realizing it. And in the class, we actually demonstrated this. We had a volunteer who accepted to read a word that that I displayed in class. So here's the word. And so when you see a word like this, you probably have never seen this word before. You realize that, in fact, the lady who demonstrated in class did it beautifully well because she had never seen this word before. And she went something like calceolaria integrifolia. That was, more or less what she did. And I asked her, why did you do that? Why were you reading in such a choppy manner? She said, well, she didn't know how to pronounce the word. And so what she had to do was to break the word into syllables. And in breaking the words into syllables, she's taking the sounds of the letters, using them to produce each syllable, and then at the end of the day, put the syllables together to create the word. That is the fundamental skill in phonics, being able to hear a word and break the word or segment the word into its component parts. That's a very crucial skill in phonics, and that's literally what she used as a grown-up, as a teacher who is already as a parent. So this is not a young person, and she was able to still use her phonics skills in this particular situation. And so that's what most of us will do when we see unfamiliar words. We'll probably break it down into its syllables or into its component parts, and then use those component parts to produce the word. But you see, oftentimes what happens is when you're reading a novel or reading a book, and then you come across this word or any unfamiliar word, what is the tendency? What is the thing that you normally do? Well, I was happy that everybody in class agreed with me that what you do is to skip the word as long as you kind of understand what they're trying to say. You may not want to read the word or try to struggle to pronounce the word because you're like, yeah, 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 I get it, and then you move on. And so that's what we often do, but we don't want our learners to do that. We want our learners to actually learn how to read any word that they come across confidently and independently. And so that's why phonics is a very important skill to have because it helps them learn how to read and to be independent lifelong readers. So once again, I come back to the point that phonics is a lifelong reading skill. Children and their parents need to understand that. Your parents in school need to understand that it's not child's play. Phonics is not about children. It's not just about playing around all the time with sand or with foam letters or with block letters. It's actually a skill that can be used to teach even adult learners who never learned to read. So far at this point, we've talked about what phonics is not, what phonics is, and now we want to look at some historical methods that are used in teaching phonics. You might want to do some research on this personally yourself, but in the class, we went through several things. I talked about how each individual learned to read, and people talked about their different experiences, those that could remember. For example, we had some who said they remember using Janet and John series or the Peter and Jane series or the Queen's Primer. People mentioned that as well. Some people still use the Queen's Primer in school. And we all agreed in class that these artificial readers use high frequency words, which you just used to repeat and repeat and repeat and practice until you memorize them. And then anytime you see them, you're able to just instantly say what those words are. But they didn't offer any skills in comprehension. There was no storyline. There was nothing. It was just trying to get the children to learn or to memorize these words. Um, and so this method of teaching is called whole language or whole word reading, just memorizing the words. And it was very dominant for a long period of time. And the idea was that when children learn to speak by being surrounded by other people who are speaking, so they learn and then they imitate what they learn. And then the idea then is that if you surround children with real books, and with real words, then they will automatically learn how to read, just like they automatically learn how to speak by being surrounded by people. But you see, the problem with this style of teaching is that children had to memorize sight words by rote. They guessed at the words using pictures or context or even the first letter in the word. They guess at what the word is supposed to be. And then when they start to write, they invent spellings. They don't actually know how to spell the words because they never learned how to spell the words. They just memorized the words. And children end up learning by chance or by personal discovery rather than any kind of directed instruction by a trained teacher. And the bottom line in that kind of situation is that even though the children might eventually learn to read, they didn't develop good reading skills. And those who did learn to read learned very, very slowly. And then around the year 2000, the whole language was condemned and replaced with systematic phonics. And this was using the sound of letters to teach reading. There was the analytic phonics, which I explained thoroughly in class. It's on the slides as well. There was analogy phonics, and then there's onset and rhyme phonics. The onset is the initial consonant in a syllable, and everything else that comes in that syllable is the rhyme. And so what happens is the rhyme is taught. So for example, I have here each, and then the onset, the first consonant in the syllable is changed, and then you find that children are able to read the rhyme family by changing the initial sound. And then synthetic phonics developed, and this had to do with blending or synthesizing individual sounds to produce a word. So when you see the letters on paper, BAT, and you're able to sound them as at, then you're able to blend the sounds together by saying something like the at, bat, and then you arrive at the pronunciation of the word. We also discussed how the participants in the class teach reading in their classes. And then we came to the point where we discussed the Rose Report, which was published in 2006. And this report was commissioned by the Department of Education and Skills in the United Kingdom. And they wanted to review how early reading was taught to children. And in that report, Sir Jim Rose was the author of that report, and he was able to come to a conclusion out of all the methods of teaching reading that were out there, the systematic synthetic phonics was the most ideal way of teaching reading, effective reading, helping children to become effective, independent, lifelong readers. And so this system of teaching reading, SSP, um, did away with word solving, did away with the analogy, did away with the guessing. The sounds were taught explicitly and systematically in an incremental way, making it easy for the children to read independently, whether an adult was there or not. The advantages of SSP, why SSP is more valuable than any other system of teaching phonics, includes the fact that it is quick, the sounds can be taught very, very quickly, it is thorough, all the 44 phonemes are taught, it is explicit, there's no guessing game, everything is taught clearly and distinctively. Then it is systematic, so it grows in complexity. It starts from the simple to the complex. It is incremental and cumulative. And then it is consistent. It is the same code, the same language code that is taught to 2-year-olds that is taught to older students. It's just that it increases in complexity as the age of the learner increases as well. So it's the same approach, the same method that is used. So it is consistent. And it is also efficient, teaching both reading and spelling in the same curriculum and can be done very, very quickly so that after a couple of lessons, you can have your young reader actually already blending 3-letter words. And I give the testimony of this young girl who is in the picture here, who was able to read 2 to 3 letter words before she was 2. She grew up to be a champion speller in her primary school, although she's not doing so much spelling in secondary school now, but she can spell virtually any word that she hears. And she's able to also read virtually any word that she sees. This is because of the phonics training that she got very, very early on in her life. So the beauty of SSP is that it is the same English alphabetic code that is used, the same code knowledge, the same core skills, the same sub skills, regardless of the language that the student speaks, the level of language proficiency, the age of the student, the stage they are in learning, or the time that the school has allocated to phonics. Regardless of that, SSP is still very, very efficient, and the student can learn to read very, very quickly. SSP is the most effective approach to teaching reading to young pupils, and you can read more about that report, the Sir Jim Rose report, on this link that is provided here. You can read a summary of that report on that page. So the SSP is the method that we're going to teach during this 6-week program. So this is just like an introduction to it so that you know exactly what the SSP is all about. These are some examples of SSP programs out there. Many people will be familiar with Jolly Phonics. There's Reading Eggs, there's Fast Phonics, there's Reading Rockets, Phonics Heroes, Phonics International, and Twinkle is the one that is hidden under the image there. The link to it is displayed on the screen as well. So SSP, the systematic synthetic phonics teaching principles, involves 2 basic principles, which is synthesizing and segmenting. Synthesizing has to do with blending sounds together for decoding or for reading. The process is very, very simple. You sound each individual sound in the word, and then you blend them, you run them together. So like I've tried to demonstrate by the letters here. So you go something like fun, something like that. And then your segmenting involves taking the sounds apart, you hear a word and then you're able to take out the individual sounds that are in the word, and that skill is necessary for spelling. So I've used the image of a blender there to show that blending or synthesizing involves putting everything together and blending it into one. So you take the individual sounds and you blend it into a word, and that is the process of reading. While segmenting is like when you have an orange or a tangerine, and then you take out the segments one after the other. So you hear a whole word, and then you're able to take out the individual sounds that are present in the word. So in SSP, this is just some principles of SSP. You can read this on your own. The basic skills, the core skills, the soft skills, the reading soft skills, and handwriting skills. All of these are covered in those tips there. Okay, so SSP, these are just 4 very helpful tips that you might need as a phonics teacher in classroom environment, it's very, very important to, first of all, practice. Once you have taught the skill, you need to keep practicing. Practice, practice. You can never practice enough. As the pupils are acquiring increased code knowledge and all the phonics skills and soft skills that you're teaching them, you need to keep practicing them and applying them to cumulative words, sentences, and reading text. There are lots of appropriate reading materials online. I have some links here as well that I will share with you. You can get a lot of reading materials online and you can continue to practice. But remember, only practice the code knowledge that you have taught the children. Don't give them something to read that you have not taught them. So that if you only taught them the first six sounds in Jolly Phonics, for example, at, e, mm, those first six sounds is all you've taught them. Don't bring them group two or group three sounds because that would only confuse them. Okay, so yeah, so you need to practice, 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 and only practice the code that you have taught the children so you don't confuse them. Please, it's important that you bear that in mind. Otherwise, if you're giving them, if you're asking them to read what you have not taught them, you're going to make them feel incompetent because if they're unable to read it, they're going to feel like they don't know it. So only test what you have given them, only practice what you have given them. Okay, we move on. Second helpful tip, practice without picture cues. Children are very, very intelligent and they can guess at words by looking at the pictures. So if you have a reading practice material and there's so many pictures in there, you might think they actually know the words, but they might just be guessing by looking at the pictures. So try to use practice material that does not distract them with a lot of pictures. Let them focus on actually being able to blend the words, the sounds to make the words that they are looking at. When you're using pictures, use them sparingly and use them to support, not to take over the reading skills of the children. Don't turn it into a picture guessing situation. All right, another helpful tip, offer appropriate materials. I mentioned this a little bit when I was talking about the practice tip. Only give material that is appropriate to their code knowledge. This will build their confidence, it will build their fluency, and there are lots of graded readers online. So please, um, don't give them books that they cannot read so that you don't deflate their ego and they don't feel like they don't know what they're doing because they can't read what you have put in front. Helpful tip four, this is the fourth one, enrich every learning opportunity. Don't let any learning opportunity just be for what you're focusing on. Anything that develops during the course of that reading, make sure you exploit it, make sure you teach it to them, make sure you take advantage of it. So when you're reading, you come across a new word, don't just read the word and move on. Explain what that word is. Let them understand how it works. Let them understand the meaning, how it is used. Even use it in class with them. That will help them to develop their vocabulary. Ask questions about what they have read. This will help them to develop their comprehension skills. And then provide opportunities for them to be able to test their grammar, use the things that they have learned to improve their grammar and all that. So also you could use it as a spelling program as well. So you're not just reading for the sake of reading, you're also learning to spell, you're learning comprehension, you're learning grammar. All of that is being reinforced in your phonics. So I said I was going to give some websites, useful websites. These are some where you can get graded readers um, that are appropriate to, they're graded and usually divided according to um, sound groups. So you teach the sound and then you have the material that you can use to practice those sound groups. So what have we covered so far? We have looked at the concept of phonics, what phonics is and what phonics is not. We have looked at all these related concepts around phonics. We have looked at the English letters and sounds, the fact that they don't have a one-to-one correspondence. We have looked at the English alphabetic code. We touched it in the next lesson. We're going to actually discuss it a little bit more, go further into the English alphabetic code. And then we've looked at the reason or the advantages for teaching reading using the SSP methodology. You need to understand why that is the methodology you're using. And because there's so many different programs out there, I showed you several. There's Twinkle, there's Letters and Sounds, there's uh, Jolly Phonics, there's Reading Eggs. All of these are all different ideas out there. Please go online, look at all of these ideas that there are. Look at the ones that you can fit into your context. I mentioned in class that Jolly Phonics, for example, is very popular in Nigeria, but it is a very, very expensive program. There's so many things that you need to put around it, and it's very, very elaborate for a Nigerian system where you have so many items on your timetable and you have so many things you need to cover. It might be very, very hard for you to spend so much time, 30 minutes, 1 hour, on one activity alone. And so you find that if you want to invest time in all of the storytelling and then the singing and the all the activities that are involved in one sound, you may not be able to do anything else for the entire day. So what I usually advise is take the best that you can out of all of these different systems that are out there and just adapt them to your context. You know what works in your environment. You can bring new ideas in, but don't go too far overboard that it becomes unmanageable for you. So look at what you can fit into your own context and make it work for your context. Take the best out of all the ideas out there and create what works in your context. It's very, very important for teachers to realize and to that, especially because of the environment that we live in. I mean, you might have the music, you might have all of these things, but you have no power to power your devices to play the music. So how do you go about doing that? That would entail you maybe getting something else to get it done, and it might just waste your time. So you might be able to build your own phonics curriculum based on your context. So in the next lesson, we'll be looking at the English alphabetic code in details. The chart will be sent ahead, or in this case now it has already been sent to the class because we have had the second class at this point. So the chart was sent ahead and the participants were encouraged to interact with the charts in preparation for the next class. So yeah, so this is what's going to be covered in the next lesson: in the English alphabetic code, encoding and decoding skills, phonemic awareness, and then differentiation and manipulation of uh, questions. Well, if you have questions after watching this video, you might have to send me a text, send a WhatsApp question, send a question on the WhatsApp platform, or you can send me an email as well. Okay, thank you so much for listening and see you next lesson.